Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world, and welcome to today's DevOps.com webinar, brought to you by TechStrong and Everbridge. My name is Cody J. Brown, and I'll be moderating today's session. We have an exciting presentation ahead of us, but before we begin, I have just a few housekeeping notes. Today's event is being recorded, so if you miss any or all of the discussion, it will be made available to rewatch. You'll receive an email after the webinar concludes with a link to access the on-demand. We want to hear from you, so please feel free to send in your questions at any time throughout the program by using the Q&A feature. We'll try to address as many questions as you send in, so make sure to send them in early. And we also encourage discussion using the chat tab, so just let us know your thoughts or say a quick hello. Let us know where you're from. And finally, at the end of today's webinar, we'll have a drawing for 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. Stick around to see if you are one of our 4 lucky winners today. Let's go ahead and kick off our webinar. Thank you for joining us for a fireside chat on value stream management. And I'm joined today by Stephen Walters, Solution Architect for Everbridge, and Bryn Jones, Senior Incident and Problem Manager at Sky UK. It is my pleasure to turn the floor over to Stephen. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Cody. Thank you for that introduction. Just to give you a brief introduction into myself, and then I will hand over to Bryn, and he can introduce himself. My name is Stephen Walters, and I'm a solution architect at Everbridge. My specialization is around DevOps and around the X-Matters platform. And for quite a considerable amount of time, we've been looking at how value stream mapping and value stream mapping techniques can help organizations in enhancing and improving their incident management capabilities. One of those organizations that we've been working with is Sky, and Bryn has been party to those actual discussions. Bryn, would you like to just quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll get into a chat?
Can do, yeah, thank you. So yeah, Bryn Jones for Sky UK, Major Incident and Problem Manager, managing major incidents and problems, essentially. But a lot of people think of Sky as generally TV services, but there's a lot more to it than that. There's all sorts of different products across the UK and Europe, and also we've got things coming across the state now from the parent company Comcast and BCU. Sky Mobile, we've got the news and sports websites, customer management systems we manage, and things like that. So yeah, so a part of the role as well is looking at improving processes so that essentially if we get incidents coming in, we can resolve them quicker and easier to restore service.
Thank you, Bryn, for that introduction. And as Cody mentioned at the beginning, please feel free to pop anything you want to say in chat, ask us some questions in Q&A. I know Sky also do a broadband package. I don't think Bryn can help you if you've got any actual particular broadband problems today. There's a particular subject that we're talking about, so please go through Sky support for those particular questions. But we do welcome any questions you've got, any thoughts or any comments that you'd like to make. Please pop them in there into the chat, and we'll gratefully incorporate those into today's discussion. So to start with, to kick off, Bryn, before knowing or even looking at value stream management, and using it as a method of continuous improvement, there were obviously challenges that Sky were facing at that time. Would you like to just spend a bit of time telling us about what Sky were going through, what you were doing, what you were looking at?
So I don't know about challenges as such, but just continuously trying to improve what we do. And as with many other organizations, lots of organizational change, especially across with COVID and things like that. Lots of onboarding of other teams and other territories. So an increased number of incident management teams as well. So the tools that we use increasingly used across different incident management teams with their own individual sort of niche requirements as well. So yeah, we've been working with the X-Matters service for call-out systems and things like that for quite some time. And we had some additional functions brought in to aid with the calling out support teams, so the X-Matters Engage. Mm-hmm. So we were using that But we had to get into it. We needed to go into another web page outside of our service management tool to do that. So while you're in an incident situation, just that extra one page is quite an overhead. So it was to try and smooth out that process for the incident managers, really.
So, I mean, I just picked up and made a note on a couple of things that you said there that I think be good to expand on. So, you're going through periods of, as all organizations do, of organizational change. There's always things that are changing, that are occurring all of the time. And with that, you're having an increase in the number of teams, and with that, the number of tools. I mean, that brings complexity into a system, doesn't it? There's additional information. It can generate silos. It can, different sources of information are spread over the place. I mean, were those the kinds of challenges? Those are things that every organization has to face.
Yeah, and each of the teams, the incident management teams as well, are responsible for their own areas or their own services. But the main function, the main purpose of the teams is the same. So it's to pick up escalated incidents, get on an incident bridge, communicate the incident, get the support teams working and resolving service. So it sounds quite straightforward. There's a few little steps you need to go through, but the action of doing that is quite intense sometimes, especially under high pressure.
And this is something that, I mean, personally, why I'm interested in getting value stream management as part of incident management. It's something that I know that I've spoken about with my peers. I'm an ambassador with the DevOps Institute, and I've spoken with people there, and it raises eyebrows from time to time because value stream management is seen very much as that thing for delivering value. It's part of the development process, the software delivery life cycle. So it's a left to right thing that delivers value at the end. But as you mentioned, incident management itself is a series of staged processes.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about incident management for me is that there's certain core tenets. It's the time, the speed of response. You don't get aggressive SLAs or SLOs on delivery as you do with incident management, where you get that kind of
and all the time that's going on, you need to portray a level of calm as well. You know what I mean? There's potentially something major going on, some critical incidents happening, and there's major impact. There's high pressure across the incident bridges with many people, sometimes senior stakeholders as well, wanting to get involved because they want to know what's going on. So yeah, you've got to have a level of calm there and make sure you're delivering and communicating to the right level to the right people in a timely fashion as well. And that's what the overhead, I think, is that we've been trying to conquer.
So it's really about trying to simplify, because the last thing you want is more complexity in your day job, along with the complexity of a particular incident or problem that you're trying to resolve. It's just going to put stress and pressure on your people that you just don't need or you don't want, really. So it's about making it as simple as possible.
Yeah, and part of it as well is going through change and things. Your audience changes, your stakeholders change, your products change. All the incident management teams and the support teams, the DevOps teams, all need to keep up to speed with that as well. And while that's happening, we've got to adapt the way that we communicate, maybe to new people or a new way, or all sorts of different things. And I think because of the nature of our role, we kind of solutionize what we need to do, and that's what we've done. I guess accidentally, we've said, right, we need to do this, and we've asked our support teams to build us solutions, what we think we need, rather than looking at a wider picture and saying, right, we need to do something here. What's available out there, either internally or externally, that can help us along the way. Because you might not know, if you're kind of focused on your own organization, your own systems that you've got.
And that brings us nicely into the discussion then about the actual value stream mapping workshops, because that's something that we found certainly, and you exclaimed yourself, you found extremely beneficial, was that holistic view that you got to look at things, the bigger picture as we're within there. But we'll come into that into more detail at a moment. So I mean, in terms of those workshops, what was your initial experience of it? Because I know when we had our first workshop, it was actually a little bit difficult, wasn't it? It wasn't the easiest thing to get your head around about how you operate and how you work and how you have to think.
Yeah, and I guess, and just taking it back to before that a little bit as well, if we can. When I said we were trying to solutionize what we wanted, and we were asking our support teams for systems, and it ended up being a 3-way conversation with ourselves, our support teams, and then you guys. But then we started linking that up, and after we had a few more conversations, I think it was obviously one of your suggestions: should we do this session? So when let's do that. Spend a few hours trying to have a look at it rather than just trying to address, in particular needs.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the issues that everybody does this, they feel the pain that is closest to them, and that therefore is usually the biggest thing and the biggest problem. Sometimes it's taking that step back and being subjective about something rather than being objective about something rather than being subjective about it, which is probably where you're coming through around when you were looking at point solutions.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're going into it now, but just sitting down and trying to explain to yourself what we do and how we do it in the granular detail, and even just by explaining it, as you were mapping it out, I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, what we're doing that for? Why we're putting all that effort into some of these processes, when there must be easier ways to do things.
That is actually a really good point that you made there, which was you mentioned about the 3 teams and about bringing them together, these 3 parts. Is that we've all come to the table with our own expertise. I've come with my knowledge of DevOps and the X Matters tool, but ultimately I know nothing about your systems, how you operate, what you need to do to support your customers and to keep your business running. You are the experts within that. And it's important, really, that when you come into a meeting like that, everybody respects the fact that everybody is an expert in some area or another, and to take that on board as part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, when you went into the value stream mapping, what were the kind of values that you were trying to achieve? Because obviously the output from a value stream mapping workshop is value. And many people, as I mentioned, when they think of value stream mapping in terms of a delivery exercise, the value they're delivering is whatever that functionality or that feature or that business service is delivering. But what were the values that you were looking for from this?
So I think more making it easier for the incident managers to manage the incident, to manage the support teams, to manage the stakeholders, the communications to the stakeholders at the same time, ultimately to enable them to restore service quicker. So the value would be quicker resolution rates, and less impact to the customer or the business, depending on what the situation was. But more of a feeling if we get tools in that help the process and automate some of the tasks that we need to do, and we're repeating a lot of the time, it's easier for the incident manager. They have less to do during that incident and can focus more on restoring service.
So it's almost about getting the best value out of the people in there, so that they're not stuck in those kind of manual, repetitive, horrible jobs that really they shouldn't have to be doing, that aren't actually delivering the end product, which is to get things back running and fixing again.
Yeah,
getting the best out of the people and using the best of their skills and capabilities.
because it's easier. It's easier for them. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about that simplification within there and those kinds of things. I mean, in terms of the value so there's a value in terms of the people there. There's obviously value in terms of the business services as well, because while things are down, the value that's been initially delivered is gone. You're not delivering that anymore.
Yeah.
So it's about the restoration of that value, of delivering that value, isn't it? And making sure that that's delivered as quickly as possible. As you mentioned, things like the mean time to resolve and so on, and find those kinds of issues within there. There's also another element in terms of the communications, I think, which is important, that came up in the discussions we had, which is around stakeholders.
Yeah, and the complexity of it as well for our organisation anyway, and I'm sure many others will be very complex as well. So yeah.
So, I mean, talk us through just some of those kinds of complexities that you're having to deal with, and that we're having to.
So we've got, I guess, different levels of stakeholders that we need to keep up to date with situations. So you've got the technical teams that we will be dealing with, and the senior management of the technical teams need to know what's going on, as well as at the same time the business stakeholders need to know what's going on with a particular incident. So we need to communicate two separate sort of messages. One's a business friendly message that's going on, and then another message potentially sometimes with the technical teams and senior technical directors, if you want, most of the time, so that they know what's happening. But we need to focus on restoring service, so we like to keep them informed. Sometimes if we get too much of a senior board on an incident bridge, it can cause a bit of carnage, and people sometimes, not that there's a blame culture at all, but might be a bit more worried on what they might want to see on an incident bridge. Let's say they've done they've performed a change and it's went wrong. Things happen. But we need people to be open, honest, and transparent about what's happened, and we need that trust across the incident management teams and the support teams, the DevOps teams, things.
I mean, I know in terms of my history in the past with previous organizations I've been in, sometimes there can be a problem with people really want to get involved and they don't, it can be a bit more troublesome than it needs to be.
Yeah.
There's good intentions, but it actually causes more problems than ever.
In communication, it's always a challenge, because you've got, we're communicating to sometimes hundreds of people, and there's so many different levels of technical understanding amongst these people. Some people want all the detail, some people just want it very high, and some people want it in the middle. And that's part of the challenge as well, to get it right. But part of our challenge is as well, we have different streams of communications going out, so we need to manage them as well.
And it's about managing expectations as much as anything else, isn't it? It's because the last thing you want is somebody coming back to you saying, why am I not hearing about this when somebody else actually is?
And that goes partly back to the organizational change. Things change, new people come in, people go, new products come in, new teams spin up. We need to know who these stakeholders are to make sure we're getting them the right message when they want it.
That actually brings me to an interesting point. I've just suddenly thought of this, so I'm.
Is that the subscription one you were thinking about? No.
Sorry for putting you on the spot, but I suppose there's a balance question here around standardization, isn't there? So whether you're standardizing your processes, your messages, and so on, because not everybody is, vanilla. Some people are rocky road, some people are mint chop chip, to use the old ice cream adage. So it's where, how do you find that balance?
So that's interesting as well, because again, we've got different teams across the organization with different levels of maturity. For instance, our team's very established and goes back quite far. Some of the guys are really experienced, really good at their jobs, but they're quite static in the process they follow, and introducing change to what they do is a challenge, because they know what they're doing. It's bread and butter. They do it, and if you want to take it off the tracks a bit and do something different under pressure, it's easier for them to fall back to what they're used to. So that's why some of the changes, some of the toolings that we've introduced, like the Engage with X Matters, it's been hard to introduce that to some of the team, just because they're used to their ways. In contrast to that, we had a newer team using the same services in America. They started a few years ago. As they started, they were speaking to us saying, right, have you got any tools that we can call support teams out and get on an incident bridge and get things solved quicker? And I was like, yeah, we've got this X Matters Engage, give this a go. So they've used it from the off, and they're still using it now, daily. So they're really using it lost. And then we've got other teams across in Europe, a kind of in between state that they want to use it. Engage with X Matters as an example. they want to use it. They're setting their support teams up to use it, but it's the Workers' Council. They've got to get through that now to be able to use that. So challenges, different teams want to do things differently, but we're all doing the same function and the same processes and the same aim of restoring service, obviously, as well.
But it's yet another complication that when you're going from country to country, you've got different regulations, different laws, different compliances that you need to deal with. Because, I mean, this is the thing. Many people years ago, when you spoke about a regulated industry, you thought about finance and you thought about pharmaceuticals, and that was just about it. But really, with GDPR and with all of the data regulations that are coming out now, we are all operating within a regulated environment today. And that's something as well that probably has to be considered as part of any flow or messaging or as part of that instant process as well.
Yeah, and part of calling support teams out as well. It's not so bad, Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, but when you're talking a weekend or you're talking overnight, and the way you can configure the systems as well to be quite aggressive if we need to. And again, the support teams are there to restore service. So it's harsh, but we can set things to call them out if it's through the night and they sleep through it. It calls them again in a few minutes and again and again, and then it escalates up the management chain as well. So there's good tools that we've introduced that can do that if need be.
So in terms of about achieving that, let's go into the actual value stream mapping exercise itself, the workshop that we went through. I mean, just talk us through that, what your thoughts were as we went through it. And I'm thinking myself about that very first workshop. What was your feelings about it, how it went?
I mean, just went in with an open mind. I'd never been through a value stream mapping session before, because again, we just did our job and we're trying to evolve things, but we'd never kind of sat back and mapped it out with you or anyone else and have a wider view of it. Just looking for ways we could improve the services that we use. I didn't really have any expectations, really. I just thought, let's see what you've got, in the hope that you'd be able to give us some guidance based on, I guess, other experience you might have spoke with other companies as well, who, again, they'll be doing similar things, trying to restore service, communicating, managing incidents. We do it all over the globe, don't we? And I think that's what we found when we were talking to you as well. Some ideas that we had, you kind of put a different slant on some of the thoughts. I think sometimes when I was explaining in the details some of the actions we were having to perform, you could see you looking, thinking, "Why are you doing that?" But again, that's because we put a solution in. We say, right, we need to do this, so let's make the tools do this for us. Whereas there may be better and easier ways to do it.
I mean, I will be honest. There is a technique that I use as part of the value stream mapping workshops, which really is just it's provocation, and I do apologise now. I call it poking the bear. And
no, but you did. You kept asking, why and how. Not just why. How do you do it? Physically, how do you do it? What do you do there? Where does where do the messages come from? Where do they go? How do they get there? What other systems use and tie into it all. So no, it was good.
And one of the things, I mean, in terms of the format and the layout of the workshop, the way that we did it, the very first thing we did was to define those value statements. What is it important to you? Why is it important to you? And what I tried to do as we went through the session was to constantly listen to what you were talking about, you and the other members of your team, as you were discussing that, and then look at those value statements that we got written above and say, is this conversation actually related in any way whatsoever to the bullet points that are up there? And that's sometimes when you just have to throw something in there and say, is this really driving the value? Is this the why or the what that you want in there? That focus on the value statements actually, I think, is extremely important and helps to stop you from disappearing down a rabbit hole, as it were, of some going down some route that you don't doesn't provide any value to you whatsoever. So it's a focus on those value statements as well, I think. And that's something that I found that your team did well, is that they you very quickly got into discussions within the team, and then quickly identified, well, okay, we could make improvements there, but is that really going to add that? That's not really where our problem is. That's not really where our constraints are. And I think very early in the session that was, there was maybe a sense of, I don't know, frustration's maybe too harsh a word in there, but there was a sense of, okay, when are we going to have that big moment and that big thing? And it happened later on, didn't it? There was an epiphany moment where just suddenly something twigged. Oh, okay, that makes a difference. And it was around those comms, wasn't it? It was around the stakeholder comms.
Yeah, and I think it was, to get a bit more specific, it was the linking this like ServiceNow with Microsoft Teams that we use, and splitting that into an incident bridge and your stakeholder communications, two obviously separate things, and trying to automate some of that where you could.
Yeah, because you know, as with any organization, when you're trying to get, I mean, it's bad enough trying to coordinate diaries and calendars and get people at the same time together in a meeting. Mm-hmm. But when you're trying to get people onto a conference call there and then, that can be difficult. And making sure you've got all of the right people as well on a conference bridge and a conference call. So it was trying to find a way to actually work all of that out. It was like some sort of horrible scientific theoretical physics equation, wasn't it? I think, you know, trying to work out who you needed on what call at what time. And there's a danger then of just sending that message out to everybody, and then that's when you get everybody on a call and you get all of the stakeholders involved in technical discussions where they don't need to be.
Yeah, it might have felt that way to you. I wasn't trying to portray that sort of situation, but
it did to me, because I'm just not at that.
Yeah, but that's the point, and it was good to be able to try and map out and explain our process. Again, because we do it, you know, day in, day out, and again, we're telling you what we're doing, and you're thinking there's an awful lot going on here, which there is. But it is a bit of controlled chaos because, you know, that sort of first few minutes of a major incident, you've got escalations coming in, you've got alerts going off, you've got you know, whatever the business or the customers, or depending on who's feeling the impact, you've got them coming in as well, and you need to be getting the support teams on. You need to get your notifications to your stakeholders, both technical and business or customer, or whatever you need to get out. That's that short period of time can be manic, and that's what I'm saying. It needs to be calm, and we need to rely on the tools to do it. And because certainly we've been doing things manually quite a bit, because we've put that manual solution in, we need to do this. Trying to explain that, it's like a spider's web of all sorts going on.
But you got that. I mean, if I can understand it eventually, then just about anybody can.
Yeah, we had to keep remember, we had to keep explaining. No, this is the business stakeholders, this is the technology stakeholders, and yeah, it's complex.
And it helped really to have a graphical representation of that. I mean, we had our own complexities due to COVID and COVID restrictions. You know, normally this is the kind of thing that you would do face to face, whiteboard, post-it notes, and then people could get up, you know, draw lines around things, move stickers around, and so on. But we were having to do this remotely, so we were using a lucid chart. We were creating a lucid chart flow to define what the steps were, the actions and the activities. So that ability to see something that you could share graphically on screen, I think, helped as well. It helped to expose not just the good things, how things worked, but also the bad things and the things where, as you said, do we really need to do that?
Yeah, and it was interesting, again, going back to, it's quite simple. Incident comes in, get people on an incident bridge, communicate it, get it resolved, and like that. But when we've mapped it out, it's quite vast. all the different actions in between.
Yeah, and really, that, I mean, we're bringing it back to what this is about in terms of that value stream management and a value stream mapping exercise. It was about making that whole thing leaner. It's about having that leaner process and identifying what are the real steps you need to do, because it's not just as something that for me that came out of the exercise, and something that I'm a personal champion on. As much as I'm working for a company that has tools and that sells tools, it's not all about the tools. It was also about just the processes, the way people work, and the people themselves, and how the people interact and work together within there as well. How much of an impact has it had on you in terms of thinking about how people work with each other? When you think about how we discussed, that flow and people working in that flow, has it changed your perception of how people interact with each other?
Not really. My perception of I don't know how to turn it around a bit, and just looking at the process and the way it was mapped down, I would have probably went sort of top to bottom. But just flipping that sort of left to right and in a more sort of linear fashion and a timeline, if you like, of what we're doing, that was helpful. Again, simple things, but we hadn't done that. Normally processes go kind of top to bottom in documentation anyway of a process.
Sometimes it can be just simple things.
Yeah, but no, it's been challenging for the last couple of years anyway, working remotely and things like that. But it was handy to have you there, you mapping it out as well. So, I didn't have to do it. So that's always a help. But, you were familiar with the tools and you were plotting it all down, and we were we need to move that here. And we were working together to build that, I think, if I remember.
I think we have to stress as well for our audience, it wasn't just the two of us locked together on a call like this, mapping this out. There was a team around us.
There was indeed
as well in there. So I had support from a couple of my colleagues who helped and provided a different perspective, a different view. You mentioned about bringing that view from different industries and from other customers, and also people who've got maybe a little bit more understanding about your business or about the way things work. But within your team as well, you had people that covered different areas that could bring different perspectives. I think that was important as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I had myself more from an incident management perspective as well. We had one of our problem managers on the call as well. So looking at that perspective has more of an outside view of what's going on during the actual incident, and then obviously that feeds into the problems that he would be working on as well. But we're all part of one team, and but just.
And that for me, I think is, I don't know, I can say this on behalf of other customers we've run these workshops with. Another little aside value add to all of this has actually been having that openness. It's breaking down the silo walls, people realizing that there are other perspectives in other teams.
Yeah.
It surprised me even today, that there's some value stream mapping workshops and you're getting people coming into teams and they've got no idea what the other team are actually doing. It's just a little black box exercise or something that goes on, but they just know that they're impacted by it in some way. And I just think it helps to explore the wider world. It allows people to see.
It did, yeah. And we had our ServiceNow engineers on these calls as well. Again, we'd had many conversations, kind of team to X-Matters, team to Everbridge or whoever. But bringing all that together gave more perspective on things, and it was good for the ServiceNow engineers as well, because a lot of the tools that we've been talking about, they've wanted to delve into a bit more and see how we can use it, and this has given them an opportunity as well to get into them, because now we've seen some of the ideas. We're solutionizing a bit, but we're saying we want that. Let's get it going.
Just a reminder again to our audience, please do take part. If you've got any questions, if there's anything that you've heard that you want to hear a bit more about, then please feel free to just pop something into the chat or into the Q&A. we'll be happy to discuss that out there openly with you. So coming back again to the value stream mapping workshop, we had one workshop that produced outputs. I mean, those outputs, I mean, what did they mean to you? I mean, we had the flow from there. We also we captured a backlog of what we saw as constraints, areas that could provide some sort of improvement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for you, how helpful was that? Did that provide greater visibility, next stages, so on?
Yeah, I think we had 4, 5, or 6 sort of items to go after, and we had to prioritize what was going to give us the best value. And that was and still is the automation of some of the integration between ServiceNow, Microsoft Teams, Xmatters, to bring that all together. So that's the focus. There was I'm trying to remember back now what some of the other ones were, like subscriptions to notification groups and things like that. That's something that we're very keen on, but it's less important at the minute than enabling automation of some of these manual tasks again that we're doing.
And that's because the thing that we found from that session, that epiphany moment, is, I mean, I mentioned it at the very beginning of the workshop. There's a quote from Dr. Goldratt, the author of The Goal, who states that, there is only one constraint. There is only ever one constraint. Any improvement made before or after that constraint is an illusion, which is basically the concept that if you improve something after the constraint, you're not going to feel the effects of the improvement because the constraint is still there. Yep. But if you make an improvement before the constraint, you're just going to end up speeding up the work that reaches that constraint point and causes that constraint to be even bigger. But what you and your team identified was that constraint. It was that one restriction within there, which was absolutely key, as you mentioned. And that's bringing in that automation. It's replacing some of that manual work around the creation of conference calls and the chats and so on, and getting people invited to those.
Yeah. It doesn't take long to create them. You know what I mean? It's not as if it's a 10-minute job. But it's manual. And again, back to, it's that critical time of an incident when everything's kicking off, and you need to be as swift as you can with everything.
I mean, I've seen a report. It's from 2014. It's a Gartner report where they stated the average, and I've got to stress here, the average cost per minute for a downtime is $5,600 per minute. And I think there was an Avaya report the same year which stated that the minimum cost they identified was $2,300 per year, but that went up to just over $9,000 per minute, not per year, per minute.
That's just your wages as well.
I wish. But I mean, it puts into perspective, when we say every second counts.
Yeah, it does
mean that, and it piles up. It can pile up as well, can't it? You're trying to get people onto a call. You can't get that right person. That's still another minute that system is.
Yeah, and an example. Yeah, if you can't get a person for whatever reason, like it might be out, through the night. Again, using your tools smarter so that the tool's doing the job for you. It's calling them. If it doesn't get them, it calls them again and again. And if it doesn't, it goes up the management chain and gets some escalation.
Yeah.
While you can focus on managing the part of the incident bridge that you have got going. Things happen. If to human nature. If you're asleep, the phone goes and it takes you a few seconds to wake up, doesn't it?
Well, what's the issue then? Yeah, 3:30 in the morning. What's the first thing you're going to do? And deal with the incident or get a cup of coffee so you can read the incident. And how long does it take to make that cup of coffee?
Deal with the incident. That's the answer.
Oh dear. So, value stream mapping workshops themselves are not value stream management. They're just one step in the overall exercise. From that, we've got a series of outputs. We're looking at, as you say, the primary thing is that constraint around the link, the connectivity between ServiceNow and MS Teams to enable the calls and using Xmatters to get the relevant people on there and onto that call. But there are other things within the backlog. So, I know since then we've had another meeting. We had another meeting and discussion where we went into more detail about those particular areas.
Yeah,
we are discussing about what the next steps are going to be once we've moved on to there. So, in terms of what next, what do you envision as being the next thing that we will do?
So we've got a bit of development work to get what we want in. So we're not quite there yet. But between now and then, I think we need to get some sort of baseline to try and measure how things happen now. Some of that measurement might just be feeling, you know what I mean? Like when the incident managers are dealing with it, do they feel more comfortable? Do they feel calmer because things are getting done with them? I don't know how you measure that, apart from it'll come out in your time to restore service. So that's what we need to do. We need to get the development work in and get the systems going properly, and then remeasure, see how that's going. Next on the agenda as well, I mean, I'm not an expert at this value stream management, but started trying to apply some of the concept to reporting that we do as well. So in incident reporting, there's multiple kind of reporting lines, and it's duplication of effort, I think. So trying to see again if we can find a tool or a process that makes that easier across all the different incident management teams.
And that feels almost like a natural progression. I mean, I know I spoke at an event some time ago where, to paraphrase an old saying, what's the most important thing about continuous improvement? It's measure, measure, measure. Because how do you know if you've improved if you're not measuring? And one of the key things, a lot of people think, oh, okay, right, we're going to put in the improvement and then we'll measure. But how do you know you've improved if you've only measured at the end?
Yeah.
Measure before, make the improvement, and then measure afterwards.
We've got one measures of time to restore service, various other measures around your incidents. So that, I think, we'll see the benefit of that going forward anyway.
Yeah, and measurement, I think, will be an important part of the ongoing process as you apply value stream management. It's almost a process of, okay, let's have a workshop. Let's look at what, and I try and identify what our big constraint is, the thing that's holding us up at the moment. How do we identify that constraint? We look at some measures. That measure will tell us where our biggest constraint is, where our biggest issue is. Apply the improvement, and then come to another workshop later on. When you look at that, you can look back at the improvement you've made, look back at the previous measure, look at the new measure. Have we made an improvement? You hopefully it's always a nice big thumbs up to that one. But when you have, it's then the ability to then go back and look at it and go, okay, what's our next constraint? And this is why it's called continuous improvement, is because you're always looking to see what that next thing is.
Yeah, there's plenty to do. And going back to the start of the call, things change. So again, you need to bring in whatever's changed to your process and review it again, don't you?
Exactly. And things change. Things change in terms of the business processes, in terms of the culture of the organization, in terms of the priorities and the values that you're trying to achieve, and also in terms of the tools and the technology. And
definitely
available.
They probably change more than people might realize. Again, when you focus on your own tools and systems and you use them day to day, if you don't look outside and see what else is going on, you could be missing a trick.
Exactly. And technology is probably where the most rapid change is actually occurring at the moment. So being able to keep up with that and make the most advantage from it, I suppose, is important as well. And actually, I mean, my bosses are probably going to tell me off for this, but it's true. It's also about making sure that when there is new technology or when there's a change to an existing technology, is it really right for you? Is it the right thing to do? So we've mentioned, we've spoken recently about the fact that we just brought in the service catalog capability, and that the ability to look at services and look at dependencies on those instances. Great piece of functionality. I think it's fantastic. But we've got to have a talk, because that's not necessarily going to be of value to you.
Exactly.
If it doesn't bring
us value, there's no need for it. But again, if you don't look, you don't know.
Exactly, and it's what we've mentioned it before. It's having that holistic view. And having that open mind to say, okay, well, this new thing is available to us. Does this actually, referring back to our value statements, help us in terms of that value statement? Help us in terms of achieving what it is that we want to achieve? We've actually got a couple of there's a question that's come in from Sunita. In fact, it's a two-part question. So let's get into this, because this sounds interesting. So Sunita says, you focused on incident management as a need for VSM. When should you choose a VSM activity? It is not for every incident. What are the other examples where you can use VSM in operations? That's actually an interest, because you're not looking at the value stream management on a per incident basis, because as we've said, it's that holistic view, isn't it? And
yeah, so I mean, I touched on it there. I think if it answers the question, I started looking at incident reporting. So again, it's not the fast-paced, high sort of stress areas of an incident. But it's reporting of them, and because we've got a complex reporting procedure, if you like, trying to get better value from the teams and from the reports, so we've got the right information. Again, we've got stakeholders that these reports go to, so trying to get a more consistent view of each of the incidents.
And in terms of the second part of that question, what are other examples where you can use VSM in operations? I mean, I've probably got compatriots and peers out there in the DevOps Institute world who are already in flames because I'm talking about value stream management with incident management. But really, for me, what is value? What is the value that you're trying to achieve? And we've got to be careful that we don't get narrow-minded and narrow-focused about what value is. More often than not, we talk about value in terms of pounds, dollars, cents, rupees, whatever it is, the currency that we're using. But value to organizations can mean many things. NPS scores, for example, that is something which is high value to many organizations today. Customer satisfaction. How do we make sure that our customers are going to remain loyal to our brand and what we do? And we only do that by ensuring that we have quality of our systems, we have uptime of our systems. So for me, where other examples of where you can use VSM in operations is anywhere where it can help you in terms of providing and adding to that value. How do you add to that value? Well, what is the goal of value stream management? For me, it's about removing waste, removing toil, removing that manual element, identifying the metrics and the measures that you need to provide continuous improvement, and anywhere where you can provide continuous improvement. So if we talk about the operations world, we're talking about incident management, but it could just as easily be applied to problem management, for example.
Yep. I'm trying to tie it back in a bit more with DevOps side of the things. So if we've got an incident, for instance, if we can make a better and a smoother and a slicker incident management process, and it's easier for the incident managers to communicate to the stakeholders, we're relying on the DevOps teams, the support teams, to fix the situation. Part of our role, I think, is to protect the techies, the support teams, to enable them to get on with it. And sometimes you've got to sit through and go through millions of logs and all sorts of things. If we can protect you better and easier, you can get on with that job of restoring service quicker. And then once that's done, you can get back onto your developing and doing the things you probably enjoy doing better.
As you were saying that, it triggered into me another thought. Within the DevOps world, we're dealing more and more with infrastructure as code, with cloud solutions, with microservices, and with all of those kinds of capabilities. And the operations world has changed as a result of that. It's no longer pieces of bare metal that we're having to go in and networking cabinets and, you know, wiring up cabinets and so on. There's a lot more that's having to be done in that area, and that's changed the focus for a lot of traditional ITIL practices. The one where I think of in terms of the biggest amount of change is capacity management, for example. Capacity management was a, you know, quite a cumbersome and large and horrible job that people had to do, which was closely linked to procurement, which basically meant that, you know, if you wanted a new service up and running, you'd have to get in touch with capacity management, who'd look to see if you've got a backlog of servers and storage and capacity within your data center. And then there'd be, if they hadn't, there'd be a 6-week lead time in order to procure everything and to get it and put it into place. But nowadays, you know,
spin something up. There you go.
Terraforming, you can Terraform, Kubernetes, you know, Docker instances, your containers, virtualization, and so on. All of these mean that these operations can be performed a lot quicker. Now, each of these are different tools. Even then, I mentioned maybe half a dozen tools. But how do we make sure that we are using them in as efficient a way as possible, that they deliver value? And in terms of that, you delivering a new service, I think that's plain to see. But that's a service that still needs to be supported, and it still needs to be maintained. You know, if you've got a monitoring system and it triggers an alarm that your storage has just reached 95% capacity, you need to be able to ensure that you are able to respond to that alarm as quickly as possible. And that's where a value stream mapping exercise could come in really useful.
And you need to know how long that last 5% is going to last as well, I guess.
Exactly. And it's also the other way around, because it's around cost management. When you go back below that threshold again and you don't need that additional capacity, how do you ensure that you're ramping that down so you're managing and maintaining your costs? All of that is a process around managing that capacity, around that capacity management, which I think it's fair to say these days is no longer a manual exercise. That is entirely an automated exercise. And if it's an automated exercise, how can you be sure that your tools and your decision processes are operating as efficiently as possible? And I think that's where value stream management could come in there. So that's my thought on that one. There was a follow-up question to that, where they said, here's one situation. A delivery team is not able to keep up the SLA with the business. Should you use value stream management in this case? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because the question that you need to ask, I mean, the value you're trying to achieve is the SLA. I mean, Bryn, SLA, do you use SLAs, SLIs, or SLOs within your organization?
Various different measurements. Not internal SLAs, we don't have them, but there is SLAs with third parties, obviously. If they're not being reached, then you need to find out where your constraint is and address it. And this, to me, could quite well do it.
I would absolutely say it would do it. Simply because, I mean, if you're in breach of an SLA, it comes back to that same situation again, doesn't it?
Whether you can resolve it or not, but at least you could identify it by keep asking them questions of what you need to do. So you might not resolve it, but if you've got an SLA that it's impossible to meet, you can find it, and then I guess you could potentially use that to renegotiate whatever your agreement is.
At the very least, I think using value stream management in those kinds of situations, looking at the SLAs, it can at least get you asking the right questions to the right people, because more often than not, I mean, trying to deal with an SLA is exactly the same as the kind of process that I spoke about before, which is, there's too much of a danger of people looking at their little black box of what they deliver and checking to see, are we okay? Are we doing our bit? Well, yeah, we've got a 4-hour SLA and we do our bit in 3 hours and 30 minutes. So it's not us. But the only problem is that they're only one part of 6 parts in a whole process and exercise, and they're taking up 3 hours, 30 minutes of the 4 hours of the SLA. So looking holistically at the whole thing, looking holistically at your measures as to why you're in breach of an SLA, I think is, the value stream mapping is a very good way of looking at that. Excellent question. Thank you very much. So we're coming into the final 5 minutes. I want to ask you just one final question here. What are your hopes for the longer term future that you can achieve from value stream management? Is there a dream? Is there a wonderful sunset on the horizon where you can see golden pastures?
I don't at the minute. I don't think it's possible, but I think we should look at it again. Get some improvements into what we've identified with the communication tools we use. Get that slicker, and then look again, taking into account any changes around us that have happened, changes in technology, which happen all the time. And any other challenges that we've got at the time. I don't know, in a few months probably is a good time frame to have a look. But yeah, again, keeping an open mind to what can be done, how we can improve, because we can always find something that we can improve on, I think.
See, I can always rely on you, Bryn. Did you see what I did there? I poked the bear again. I
keep doing that.
I set you up with saying there's a finish line, and you answered perfectly that really at the end of the day, there isn't a finish line. There's always something else to look at. Just deal with the issue that's at hand, focus on that, get that improvement, and to see what...
If you can foresee issues ahead, then obviously try and tackle them, but sometimes you can't.
Yeah. And obviously in terms of the teams themselves, this has opened up new avenues of discussion for them. This is something that you can take on board internally as your own exercise as you move forward to ensure that your ServiceNow teams are talking with your incident teams, talking with your problem teams, that everybody's working really to the same agenda, to the same set of values.
Yeah, and again, we've got multiple incident management functions. Sorry, there's something going on in the background. And yeah, again, we're all trying to do the same thing, and we've all got our individual needs, but making sure as well, when we're doing these improvements, that we're discussing it with the other teams as well, to try and bring in any of their needs as well, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And of course, all the time, if we bring in those other teams and have discussions, they're going to bring new ideas, new ways of working, new ways of thinking that potentially we haven't thought of yet.
Yeah.
So an exciting future, I think, ahead in terms of that. I look forward to speaking to you again in terms of the value stream mapping and the value stream mapping workshops. If you would like to understand more about what can be done for you in terms of helping you, there are many sources out there that you can go to understand more about value stream mapping. Come speak to us at Everbridge. We're very happy to have that discussion with you. There's also the Value Stream Management Consortium, vsmconsortium.org, as well as the DevOps Institute themselves. I highly recommend them as great sources to find out more information. But please, what I do ask is, don't just assume that value stream mapping and the value stream management process, the whole value stream management, is something that can be considered just in terms of value add of delivery of development. Wherever there is something that has a constraint, wherever there is something that may have waste, wherever there's something that has a time factor to be considered, then I would implore you to consider using value stream management and using value stream mapping processes to identify ways that you can improve using it as a continuous improvement process. Bryn, thank you very much for your time today. Loving the poster on the wall, by the way. I have noted that as something of a petrol head. There we go.
Very good.
Out now, available on Sky, I'm sure, somewhere to see.
I'm sure it will be. I think that's Sky Cinema that one's on. So
nice little plug. So thank you very much, Bryn, for your time, and thank you for speaking with us today. Really enjoyed that discussion. Cody, back to you.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Stephen and Bryn, for taking the time to be with us today. I'd like to remind our audience that today's session was recorded. So following this webinar, you'll receive an email with a link to access the on-demand. You can also find the recording living on the DevOps website. So just visit devops.com/webinars and you'll find it waiting for you in the on-demand section. Now onto our 4 $25 Amazon gift card winners. Our first winner is Kyle M. Our second winner is Prabal B. Our third winner is Babu A. And our fourth winner is Jessica C. So congratulations to the 4 of you. Please keep an eye on your inbox to claim your gift card. And if you don't receive an email, just check your spam folder. Again, Stephen and Bryn, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And I'd also like to thank you, our audience, for being with us for the entirety of today's presentation. This is Cody J. Brown signing off. Have a great day, everyone.